Hey YouTube, tubers and tubettes, welcome back to the channel. Real quick, thanks for all the new subscribers, like 300 or 400 people in the last 24 hours. Something's going on. It's the quarantine. Anyway, this video that I'm doing is way out of my wheelhouse. The reason why is all of my videos so far have been me either interviewing somebody or just talking about my life in the Philippines or talking about my life in general, etc., etc. This, as people that are not new to the channel and follow me for a little bit, and for the new subscribers, I'll explain real quick and then I'll get into the subject. This whole YouTube thing is a very selfish thing that I do for myself so that I can have a video diary of my life here, and later on in the future I can maybe plug a video on, take a look at it, and see, if I feel the same way in a year as I did today. And also to keep family and friends and everybody else kind of up to date as to what's going on in my life. Well, that's not going to happen this time. What's going to happen this time is I'm going to answer some questions from the previous video that I did. And the title of the video, if you haven't seen it, is called God is Good. Now, when I made that video, it was right in the same wheelhouse, if you will, of my other videos. It was just me blabbing about my life. And the gist of the video was that I have been on journeys. I've been on a life journey in America. I've been on a new life journey here in the Philippines. And it had occurred to me a couple of nights ago, the night before I made the video, that I've been on a spiritual journey too. And I'd like to talk about that. I'd like to record that for myself. And then if you cats want to come along for the ride, cool, you can listen in too. And if you don't, I don't blame you. But, and I wanted to make it really, really clear. And I want to make it really, really clear right now too. But when I did that video, I wanted to make it really, really clear that just because the title said God is good, it's not a religious video. It was a video about my spiritual journey. It was not made to, it was to convert you or to save you. It wasn't to change your mind or to turn you into a Christian. It wasn't to talk about atheists or agnostics or Catholics or anything else. It was just my journey. That was it. If you want to watch religious videos, there's a lot smarter, better guys than me out there, and women. So in the course of making the video, my big question had always been, where did God come from? What was before God? Who created God? And it was one of those infinity things. It's like you can just keep asking the question. If the answer was, well, some guy named George invented God, well, who invented George? You know what I mean? It goes on and on and on. In my head, I couldn't get that straight. And therefore, I found it hard to believe in something if I didn't understand its origin, being God. So I had gone 33 years, could never get a straight answer out of anybody until I bumped into a guy named Pastor Stan. And I was attending his church for about a month or so. And he invited me out to breakfast. And I asked him the question, where did God come from? And I explained in the video that he talked to me for 8 minutes and answered my question. A 33-year quest that I had been on, searching for this answer, was answered over a plate of pancakes in Las Vegas, Nevada. And then I just continued on with the rest of whatever I said. And I never watch my videos after I make them. I just, 90 seconds, I would listen to it, make sure the audio's working, and then I move on with my day. And so it never occurred to me, because I wasn't making a religious video, to go into the details of what he told me. And I got all these comments from people that said, well, what did he say? What did he say? And as I read comment after comment after comment after comment, I said, well, wait a second here. And I went back, and out of character, I watched my video. And I put myself in the viewer's shoes. And after it was over, I said, yeah, I'd want to know that answer too. It never occurred to me in my small little reptilian brain, selfish guy that I am, that I wasn't the only one asking that question. And if nothing else, people just want to know what he said. They don't maybe, maybe they don't have that question, but they'd like to know what at least he told me. I had a couple of people said, oh, Paul made a cliffhanger. Like, who shot JR? Tune in next season. And I just want to promise you, that wasn't my intent. I was just going along with my usual stream of consciousness talking, because I don't script anything. I don't write anything down. I just, like this video, I just start talking, and whatever pops in my head falls out of my mouth, and there you go. So, this is, without further ado, I want to tell you what Pastor Stan told me. I was going to make this into a real long video because there's like a bunch of other comments, there's a bunch of other questions, there's a bunch of other stuff that I have not been able to address on my computer and answer individually like I like to do. The reason why is that my internet has been just extra special shitty. And our water has been off. It was off again today. I was able to take a shower real quick because I could see that it was going down. May snuck in too, but now we're completely void of water. It's like day 4. And so her and I are doing a lot of things. We're going to be looking for a new apartment where I've got other things to tell you about what's going on that I think you might find interesting, especially the guys that are thinking about moving out here. But I'm going to save that for the next video. All I want to do in this video is answer the Stan question. Pastor Stan answered my question as follows, and I'm paraphrasing here. Please keep in mind that this is a 32-year-old conversation. So I can't tell you verbatim what he told me. But as we were talking, and Pastor Stan said, do you have any questions? I said, what's really holding me back on all of this, my brother, is I can't understand who created God. And what Pastor Stan told me was as follows. He said, that's because you're linear. We're all linear. You have a beginning, you're born, you have a middle, and you have an end. However long or however short your life is, you're going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. God doesn't have that. He doesn't have a beginning, a middle, or an end. He's what's known as omnipotent and omnipresent. So what does that mean? He says, well, omnipotent means that he can do everything. And omnipresent means that he occupies all space and all time, always. He exists in the past, he exists in the present, and he exists in the future. And I said, well, how does that happen? How did he do that? He said, well, God invented time. And when he told me that God invented time, it clicked in my head. Not completely, but all of a sudden I could feel it intellectually, emotionally. That makes sense. And I had a zillion more questions. And I said, well, how does that happen? I mean, where does he live? Where does he exist? He said, well, he exists outside of the universe. He exists outside of time. He exists out of the material world. He exists outside of the constraints of time. He has always been, and he will always be. And I said, brother, I'm having a tough time wrapping my head around that. He said, yeah, you can't. None of us can. There's no way any of us mere mortals, I don't care what your IQ is, can actually really conceive of that, and our brains cannot process that. It's beyond us. We are super far away from being able mentally, intellectually, from being able to truly comprehend that. And I thought about it, and I said, you know what? Of all the other things that I've heard, and people have told me and explained about evolution, or about it's an accident, or another religion, or another way, none of those resonated with me like this did. I really want to just reiterate that I'm not here to try to convince you to be a Christian. In fact, in my comments on the last video, I got a ton of comments from guys that are atheists and are Christians and are Muslims and are agnostic. And I've really got to take my hat off to you if I was wearing one, because they were all really super polite. I mean, there's always that 1% that, you know, it's like some psycho you got to delete. But everybody said, you know what? I'm an atheist, and I don't believe any of it. I think it's a fairy tale. And, but I appreciate your honesty, and I enjoyed the video because you were honest. And I want to just do a blanket thank you to everybody that made a comment, no matter who you are, or what your station in life is, or what you think, or what you believe, because I found that the dialogue was really cool, and I super, super appreciate it. I can tell you that I was still super, super new in going to church at that time. And I had gone 33 years with that question in my head. I had been attending church, and I'd gone to like 3 or 4 different churches with my now wife, and I didn't find anything that really, you know, she didn't like it, I didn't like it, for whatever reason. It wasn't resonating with us. But when we found this little church, Calvary Community in Las Vegas, Nevada, and Pastor Stan was the pastor, I really, really liked the message. And she really liked, you know, the other ladies and whatnot. And I had mentioned that they were pretty much professionals. But there is a process of when you decide to accept the Lord that is done in church, where they ask you if you're going to, if you want to accept the Lord. And I'll get to that in 1 second. But I asked Stan a bunch of other questions after he had answered that question. Now I was into it. You know, it was like, okay, I get that. Okay, but here's my problem. I said, I'm not that nice of a person. and he goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, you know, I think I'm a good guy. I mean, I don't go out, wake up in the morning and say, how can I irritate somebody, or how can I harm somebody? Probably the most harm I do during the course of an afternoon is to myself. I said, but I'm certainly not, you know, I have read the 10 Commandments, and I've broken several. And he goes, yeah, me too. And I said, well, you know, I said, stuff like lying, you know, I said, if the old lady comes down the stairs tonight and asks me, do these jeans make me look fat? And if I don't lie and say no, I'm going to have a really rough night. And old Stan laughed, and he said, yeah, I tell that lie too. And I said, so what's the deal? I don't understand the rules here. You know, I said, what about like tithing? What about that? And I said, what about doing good stuff? Am I supposed to, You know, am I supposed to stop swearing? Am I supposed to stop smoking? Am I supposed to stop looking at other women? Am I what? You know, what? I don't know what the guidepost is here. You know, I don't know where's the golden ticket into heaven? What's the deal? And he summed it up real simply for me, and he really settled me down, and he really eased my mind, because I encountered in my life, and I still do, a lot of real preachy people. You know, you better do this and you better do that, and if you don't do that, you're going to hell. And rah, 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 rah. He said, let me just make it easy for you. He said, as far as looking at other women, you know, that's you're lusting. He says, yeah, that's a sin. You're not supposed to do that. So yeah, you know, just looking at her is the same thing as sleeping with her, according to the Word of God. As far as lying, you know, you're going to do that. It's just human nature. You've got what's called a sin nature, Paul. I do, and he's talking about himself and everybody else too, not just me. And he says, and as far as tithing, he says, you really think God needs your money? We just discovered the guy that created the universe and everything that's in it invented time. Do you think he needs your $27? And I said, so let me ask you this. If I don't tithe and I keep lying and I keep looking at other women, does that mean, you know, I'm in trouble? He said, no. And I said, well, what do I do? He says, there's only one thing that God really requests. He's a very jealous God. He says, this is your key, Paul. He said, God does not want you to worship anything more than him. And that made sense. And that made sense. He says, because he really loves you, Paul. He's your Father in heaven. And he wants the best for you. So yeah, he wants you to not lie. And yeah, he wants you to, you know, stop looking, you know, having lustful thoughts, and have some self-control. You know, be disciplined. Put some barriers up, but he knows you're gonna screw up. He made you, crying out loud. He's already, remember, Paul, he lives in the past, the present, and the future. He already knows that we had this conversation. He already knows what your end is going to be. He already knew before he created you what was going to happen to you. So just go about your life, but just don't worship other gods and other idols. And then you've got other things like worshiping money and all that, which I'm not going to waterboard you. If you guys are still curious, start your journey too. So after that conversation, I still hadn't accepted the Lord officially. And so the next Sunday, my wife and I went to church. And as per usual, Stan, at the end of his sermon, said, you know, now's the time that if anybody here that hasn't accepted the Lord into their life, I want everybody to bow their heads. Every eye is closed. Every head is bowed. And if you decide to accept the Lord and take him into your heart, I want you to recite this prayer and with me. And so that Sunday I raised my hand and I recited the prayer with Stan, silently. And of course my wife could hear my arm going up. And so Stan had a little routine that about 4 or 5 minutes after he wrapped everything up, he left the pulpit and turned it over to like an associate pastor or whatever. And Stan would go and position himself by the front door so that he could, you know, say goodbye to everybody as they left the church. And the associate pastor would spend 3 or 4 minutes with some, you know, commercials, and the kids are meeting over in the barn later for whatever the kid thing is. And so before we made it out to the front door, my wife couldn't wait. You know, she was blah, 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 blah. Telling, oh, Paul accepted the Lord today. And so people started to shake my hand, and they started to congratulate me, you know, welcome, and making me feel good, and hugs, and everybody was just so happy for me, and talking to me and saying, oh, you know, this is gonna happen now, and that's gonna happen now. Great group of people saying this and that. But I'll never forget, I got out to the front door, and everybody's just kind of filtering out. And I was the only one that day that had raised his hand and recited the prayer silently along with Stan. And when I got to the door and I got to Stan, he didn't say a word. He just shook my hand and gave me that little smile. All right, guys. I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Bye.